Hello, welcome to today's Factory Inspire Talk, Content Confusion with Amy Morse. I'm Emma and I'm the Creative Enterprise Project Manager at KWMC, The Factory. The Factory is a makerspace based in South Bristol, and from our equipped space, we provide a variety of services, opportunities and support such as commercial services, product design, development and prototyping, training and skills, enterprise support, and finally, we're home to a thriving community of makers, small businesses, artists, and more. Our Factory Inspire Talks invite you into the world of inspirational makers, creative professionals, and business mentors to find out about their journeys, experiences, and processes. Since March 2020, we have moved our talks online, and today our talk comes as part of our enterprise support strand, MADE. MADE stands for Make, Access, Develop, Enterprise. And through MADE, the Factory strives to provide enterprise support and business support. Our first MADE initiative is MADE in South Bristol and is dedicated enterprise and business support for residents and businesses in South Bristol. Launching at the end of last year, we've got two offers available. The first, Exploring Creative Enterprise, which is for enterprise and business beginners wanting to explore and kickstart a new business and idea. And the second is Made in South Bristol Business Support, a support package for existing businesses looking to strengthen their skills, their business and grow. Made in South Bristol is delivered by the Factory as part of the South Bristol Enterprise Support Project, which is funded by the European Regional Development Fund and West of England Combined Authority Investment Fund. The Factory's enterprise strand also receives support from NatWest to work with women starting and running businesses across Bristol. So I'm excited to be joined by Amy Morse today, a writer, a business owner, a mentor, and one of our brilliant MADE workshop leads. So our Inspire Talks are live, streamed direct to YouTube, and are followed by a Q&A at the end. So if you have a question for Amy, you can ask via the YouTube chat, or alternatively, if you prefer to ask anonymously, you can email thefactory@kwmc.org and we'll ask her for you. So I will pass over to Amy to get the talk underway.
Morning, everyone, or afternoon, I should say. It's lovely to be here today, and thanks so much to Emma and the team for inviting me to come and speak today. My name is Amy Morse. I'm an enterprise mentor. I have been working with small businesses in the Bristol area since 2010. My early career was in human resources, and I quickly moved into training and employment, and then later enterprise support. In 2015, I set up my own business doing enterprise mentoring, and I call my business Learn to Love Your Words, because it's very much about enjoying the process of telling your story. And I am a writer myself. I've always enjoyed writing. Ever since I was a child, I've loved writing stories. I've got really early memories. I'm the oldest of three, so quite often I was responsible for looking after the younger two, and I used to write and tell little stories to them. So it was always my dream to be an author and a writer. And I did that in 2013 when I published my first novel, The Bronze Box. I've published 4 novels since then. So I started off my enterprise journey on a part-time basis, I suppose, really, as a side hustle, as often many creatives do. When you've got a hobby, something you're passionate about, something you enjoy doing that you can fit in around your work. And so for me, that was writing. And in 2015, I had the opportunity to bring my love of writing and my love of stories and my world as a business advisor and an enterprise support mentor into one place and start my own business. So as a writer and a fiction author and a story lover and a storyteller, for me, digital marketing and content marketing and writing was a bit of a no-brainer, really, because it meant that I could market my business and I could build my brand by doing the thing that I'm going to do anyway, which is writing. So I started blogging, probably about 2008. So it's something I've been doing a lot over the years, and as a consequence, and through my work supporting small businesses, I've grown quite a lot of knowledge and skills around the digital marketing sector. And so today's talk is just to help you to navigate some of the stuff that there is to think about when you're a small business, some of the things that you could do and overcome some of that overwhelm, if you like, in the world of digital marketing. So as the talk suggests, content marketing, it's really confusing because there's so many things that you could do. So, oops, not too far. Today I'm going to dig into the growing list of different channels. So different ways that you can actually get your message out there, especially in the digital space. All that noise that's out there and how that's structured. We're going to look at knowing your audience and who hangs out where. We're going to talk about knowing your business and what's appropriate for your business. We're going to look at some of the pros and cons, and I'm going to share a few of my top tips, and then there'll be a Q&A at the end to ask anything that you might have. And I always say there's no such thing as a silly question. So just off the top of my head, there are so many different ways that you can get your message out there in the digital space at the moment. There's so much noise online at the moment. I've read an interesting statistic recently that we have created more and published more as a species, if you like, in the last 10 years, 15 really, I suppose, since the advent of the internet, but certainly in the last 10 years, than the entirety of human history. So literally the words and the videos and the pictures and the entire knowledge of the world, if you like, is more and more online. And around that, there are so many different spaces and places where different people will hang out, and where there are different opportunities and different ways of sharing your story and building your brand, and ultimately, hopefully, building your business and selling your stuff. So the obvious ones, obviously Facebook. Facebook remains by far and away the biggest social media platform. There's a growing number of other platforms, but Facebook is still very much the dominant party in the space, and also sweeping up other organizations and other platforms. So Facebook also owns Instagram these days, which is one of the fastest growing platforms at the moment, especially with a younger demographic audience. Twitter is still huge, especially when it comes to current affairs, politics, media. If your business is in those sorts of spaces, and even gaming, actually the gaming world is quite big in Twitter, then that's potentially a really useful platform to still be involved in. Instagram, one of the fastest growing platforms, is very much driven around imagery. LinkedIn, another really fast growing platform, which is, it's been described as Facebook in a suit. So the interface is really similar to Facebook, but in particular, it's for the professional space and in particular businesses and business to business. So if your business is around providing business support to other businesses, for example, like mine is, then LinkedIn is definitely going to be a key place for you. Pinterest, especially popular in the States, actually, and a really big platform for creatives. Pinterest technically isn't a social media channel, it's a search engine. Works in a slightly different way to Instagram, for example, because even though it's image driven, you can actually link directly from the images into the place, the shop, the website where that image is sourced from. YouTube, again, technically not social media. It's the second biggest search engine after Google, and Google also own YouTube. So when you are trying to kind of improve the findability of your stuff on Google, then the same techniques will work within YouTube as well. Vine is another video platform. TikTok, I must admit, this, when I get to these ones, this is where it gets a bit vague for me, because you know I'm old now, so I don't tend to use things like TikTok. WhatsApp is a chat messenger platform, also owned by Facebook now. Snapchat. So there's all these different things. And then when it comes to your own space online, there's your own website. And I always think in terms of content, hosting things on your own website, even though within the social media space is very much about engagement and immediate conversations and sharing and building audience and building traction, ultimately the two biggest reasons for using social media are engagement and bringing people into your virtual shop. So you can kind of think of your website as your space on the digital virtual high street, if you like, your shop space. It's what showcases your business, and you want to be bringing people into there. And I liken it a little bit to like owning your own place for the first time, especially when it comes to blogs and vlogs on your website. You can hang whatever pictures you like on the wall. You can decorate it how you like. You're not necessarily going to end up in Facebook jail by inadvertently saying something that breaks their rules and things like that. So I kind of like to think of things like, especially your blog space, as a place where you can kind of you can make the rules if you like, and there's never any issues about who owns that content when you created it yourself. Whereas with social media platforms, there's always that danger that potentially you don't always own the copyright for your stuff, and there's always that risk that what happens, as I say, if you inadvertently end up in Facebook jail. The world of social media is moving so quickly as well that platforms rarely stay static and audiences change. If you ask a young person today, so I mean somebody under 20, say, about Facebook, they'll say that Facebook is for old people. So it tells you a lot about the different audiences. So websites we talked about, Google, using Google tools to actually boost the findability of your website, videos, blogs, newsletter marketing, emails are still a really popular way of staying in touch with your audience, keeping up to date with people, and people still respond to email marketing. So newsletters is still something that can work. SMS marketing, so marketing through text message, and again, automated emails. What else? I mean, there's so many different things that you could potentially think of, new things that are popping up all the time. So it's really easy to get distracted by the new shiny and the new thing, and to try and do everything and be everywhere, and it can just get really overwhelming. So just to give you a sense of the scale of potential opportunities to reach audiences and to reach customers, these are just the biggest platforms that we use here in the UK. In other parts of the world, things will be slightly different. It's certainly in China, and other places in the Middle East. Facebook, Twitter, you can't even access those platforms, so they have whole other platforms that they use that wouldn't be familiar to us here in the UK. So just to give you a sense of the scale of it, it's not surprising that it can get really overwhelming and start to just swallow your time and your energy a little bit. So just to share a bit of a graphic with you on just the split of audiences on some of the biggest platforms, if you like. So Facebook, as I say, is still by far and away the biggest platform in terms of usage, in terms of people going into the website and communicating on it regularly on a daily basis. And closely followed by Twitter, as I say, which is still a massive platform. And LinkedIn and Instagram are two of the fastest growing social media platforms at the moment. So this infographic I took from AdMass, who are a survey company based here in the States, I believe. And I have to confess, I'm a little bit confused by the percentages, because when you look at Facebook usage, I mean, it doesn't, 75 and 63 don't add up to 100%, but it does give you a sense of the gender balance and the audiences on different platforms. So age range, I must confess, I was quite surprised that 51% of teenagers still use Facebook, because the audience, as you can see from the graphic, it's more and more, the highest users tend to be sort of professional age, people 20s, 30s, up to their 50s. In fact, actually, 50 plus is the fastest growing number of new users coming into Facebook. So if your audience, it tends to be older people, professional people. I've also heard of Facebook being referred to as mum book, because it's where mums hang out. So if your core audience, if your customer base are mums, then you can see the age range definitely kind of picks up mums, but also female. There's definitely a female basis, female bias, I should say, on Facebook. So you can see it's still quite a big platform. Tends to be mostly women, let's say over 30. That's a big chunk of the audience. So if those are your target customers, that you're trying to work with, then Facebook is still a useful place to be. Instagram. So again, you can see Instagram, by far and away, the biggest audience on Instagram is teenagers and young people under 30, if you like. So if your audience tends to be more younger people under 30, then Instagram is definitely a place to be seen and to be found. Again, the split gender-wise, it's not quite as big, if you like, compared to Facebook, but it is still heavily more of a female platform than a male platform. So again, if you're targeting young women, then Instagram is definitely a good place, a platform to be sharing your business communications. Twitter, as you can see, tends to be slightly older audience and actually more male dominated than women. Or there's a fairly similar split, but yeah, also tends to be more kind of professional age people, I suppose, if you like. LinkedIn, you can see quite starkly that it tends to be more male based, and also males between sort of 30 to 50. So again, professional males is definitely the core audience on LinkedIn. So again, if you're targeting those people, then that's a place to be. YouTube, again, as you can see, actually mostly male, which is interesting. YouTube is really popular with young people. Really, anybody under 50, pretty much, YouTube is still a really highly used platform. And then Pinterest is an interesting one because, again, massively more female than male, like 15% male, very small percentage of males on the platform. Again, tends to be professional age females. So again, very often mums will use Pinterest. So if mums are your target audience, then Facebook and Pinterest are definitely the places to be. So I think when it comes to making some decisions for your own business, the idea of some of these slides and some of these graphics is just to help you to clarify where you should be spending your energy. Because at the end of the day, when you're a small business and it's just you, maybe a couple of other people in your team, you have to be vigilant about how you use your time. It's so easy to just disappear down the internet rabbit hole and try and be all over the place and spending far too much time just talking on social media without actually getting any return on that investment of your time and energy. So being a little bit more strategic about where you are and how you communicate with the audience will get you a much better return on that investment of your time and energy than if you're trying to just be an everything. So a few tips there. Again, actually, if you did want to do some more research, I mean, there's loads of data, actually, lots of different organizations. If you did a Google search for kind of audiences on particular platforms, you'll find quite a few different infographics on there as well, which will just help to reinforce some of your planning in terms of your content. So the key really then, once you've kind of got a sense of the different major platforms that are available to you, it's then about knowing your business and what it is that you want to share and how you want to do it and what works for you. And I think often the sweet spot when it comes to content marketing is finding something that you can do and that you enjoy, and also something that your audience will engage with, and marrying those two things together. So knowing your business is very much about understanding how you want to communicate your message. It's always good to have a good variety of content. And what I always recommend is that whichever platform you choose, learn to use it really well and use all of the different tools and use various different types of content. So just in this example, the obvious place, if you are doing video marketing, if you are sharing information videos, how-to videos, video blogs, video interviews, that kind of content, then YouTube is still by far and away the biggest platform in terms of sharing your video content. What I do always recommend, though, if you are going to go down the route of having, for example, video blogs to share your expertise, to support your audience, to help people to kind of navigate their way through what it is that you're trying to do and what's important to you and why you do it, then I always recommend hosting it on YouTube and then embedding it into your website, into your blog. The reason for that is if you load videos directly into your website, videos are really data hungry. So they will take up a lot of space on your website, which obviously is going to cost you more in terms of hosting because you're using more data capacity. But it can also massively slow your website down. So let YouTube do the heavy lifting and then share your videos from YouTube into your website so that people can find it in other places as well. And you can repurpose that capacity if you like. We'll talk a bit more about repurposing in a bit. So video, obviously YouTube is a big place, but also Instagram stories, and Instagram TV as another thing in terms of sharing short videos and things like that. Words. So the thing that you often find with video is that people think, oh, if I do video, I can get away with not having to write anything. And it really doesn't work like that, I'm afraid. You still need to be able to communicate and articulate what's within your content, even when it's video or image content, because ultimately Google relies on words for its algorithm in order to search and retrieve items that people have typed into Google, if you like. So if you do use video content, it's really good practice within YouTube to actually use the tools to give a really good detailed description of what's in the video. You could almost transcribe the video. And likewise, if you are resharing that video onto your website, then good practice is often to kind of have it as a blog page or like a video blog page or something, and then actually write about it as well, because it helps Google, but it also helps your audience. But when it comes to words, the big platforms that rely very much on the words that you write, if you like, obviously a blog. So having a separate section on your website, and you can think of it like your own magazine, if you like, your own online magazine. And ideally, you would want to blog on your website, because ultimately it's about driving traffic to your website and boosting your search engine optimization, so being able to be found by Google. That said, you can also blog on social media platforms, and that can be a good way of kind of testing your blogging training wheels, if you like, and testing your audience out and writing some quick information before you actually launch a full blog. If you enjoy writing, if you like writing, if it's something that you think is important for yourself and your audience, then a blog is still a really powerful way of getting your message across and sharing your expertise and giving people a sense of what it feels like to work with you as a business, and what your values are and what makes you different and what they can expect from you. Twitter, of course, is a word-based platform, but again, with Twitter, Facebook, all the social media platforms, even though the algorithms and things are very much based around words, video content and image content is also really favoured on those two platforms as well. So words and video. And what I would always say is that when you are creating content, always have an image. Even if you are relying on words, even in a blog, then definitely have plenty of images. LinkedIn, again, is quite a word-based platform, but again, you always want to include images or videos within your content. You can also write articles and LinkedIn. That's a really good way of building your thought leadership, if you like, as a business, and building your expertise within LinkedIn if you are targeting business to business. The little logo in the middle, MailChimp, is a free internet marketing email platform. So if you're thinking about having some sort of newsletter capacity within your business and staying in touch with your audience that way and building your list, then MailChimp is a really good, easy and simple way to start. Obviously, there's more complicated and more expensive and better platforms where you can kind of integrate it with your customer database and things like that. That's what I was trying to find. So for larger companies, it might not be enough, but for you, just as a small business, to start out with, it's quite a good place to start. So words, and then obviously images. Instagram in particular, because it's such a fast-growing platform, is very much image-based, but as I mentioned, also video and some words as well. Instagram very much works around hashtags, so it's about kind of sorting your words into categories, if you like. So really, I suppose the key is to think about the range and breadth of information that you can share and the way that you can do it. And I always think it's good to have variety, and that it makes it more interesting for you, it makes it more interesting for your audience, but also different people learn in different ways. Most of us tend to be visual learners, so we see things and we start to learn and pick up information. When in our waking hours, something like 60% of our brain is used up by the visual cortex. So majority of people tend to be visual learners. They'll see something first and then react and then decide whether or not they want to kind of dig deeper. That said, people think that because often people are into visuals, they're also into video, which isn't necessarily true. But also that words aren't necessarily relevant, which again is not necessarily true, because the way that good writing works is it helps the reader to build up a picture in their own mind, if you like. So it's appealing to different kind of learning styles and appealing to your audience in different formats that they might want to interact with, but also something that you enjoy and that are your strengths. It's playing to all of those strengths and finding a balance. So some of the pros and cons of that digital space and that digital noise, if you like. So the pros of content marketing, digital marketing, is it's very much a level playing field in many ways. So, for example, on Twitter, anybody, anywhere can see your tweets. It doesn't matter if they're Donald Trump or if they're a business up the road that you follow on Twitter. It is a level playing field. There are obviously there's ways that you can kind of improve the levels in your favor with things like Facebook by paying for advertising and things, but it does allow you to be able to reach a wide audience on the same terms as everybody else, if you like. So there's a certain amount of kind of fairness, I suppose, if you like, in the digital spaces, that we've all got that opportunity to be able to reach a wide number of people. Longevity, once it's there, it's there. So people can always find your content. And what you often find in particular as a blogger, what I find is that stuff that's been around for a while, Google quite likes content that's been around for a bit and has been interacted with a lot. So in a weird sort of way, when I look at the analytics for my blogs, when I publish a blog, I get a spike of activity and lots of hits and views, and then it kind of tails off a bit. And actually, my most popular blogs tend to be ones that have been hanging around for a good sort of 6 months or a year. So it's just being aware of that long-term commitment and that longevity. One of the big challenges with social media and digital marketing in particular is it's really easy to kind of give up too quickly and not appreciate the fact that actually it is very much a bit of a long-term investment in building that audience, building that library of content and building that brand. Obviously it's a growing space, and we've all known in the past year just how valuable it's been to be able to communicate online and everything. So if anything, it's going to grow even more and more. The very fact that we're doing things like this now, live streaming and doing talks and videos and training online, just shows that it's such a growing and important part of our world. And can you imagine if we'd have all lived through lockdown and not had the internet? Oh my God, it would be riots, wouldn't it? It would have been a nightmare. It's free. I say free in inverted commas because you can do it for free, but obviously it costs time and energy. You can also invest in it as well by paying for advertising and things. It can be fun. Like I always think, and it's partly why I call my kind of umbrella business, if you like, Learn to Love Your Words, that actually it's very much about doing something that you enjoy doing. And if you enjoy doing something, you're much more likely to stick to it. So if you find a platform that you quite like using and that you feel comfortable with and that engages with your audience, and that is the sweet spot really in terms of content marketing, rather than trying to navigate your way through Twitter and you hate every minute of it, or LinkedIn or whichever platform. And it can be really targeted as well, because you can go in and you can optimize your platforms and follow the right kind of people so that they follow you back, and you can build a really targeted audience within your sector and within the people you want to appeal to. But then, of course, the cons of the digital space is just probably for a lot of people, one of the big fears around content marketing is just that lack of privacy and those boundaries, and how personal do you make it? How much do you give away of yourself? What's appropriate for your audience? What are you comfortable with? And the idea that suddenly we're like laid bare and we have to live our lives online. I think with social media in particular, I think of it like a tool. And this is very much around the kind of the toxic and polarizing side of social media. That, like, if you've got a hammer, you can use it to break stuff, or you can use it to build stuff. So you kind of get out of it what you put in. And in many ways, you have to decide on your own boundaries. Nobody can kind of tell you what's comfortable for you and what you're happy with and how much you want to say. You know, some people, for example, might have images of their children on their business Facebook pages or whatever, because it's an important part of their business and their lives. Other people like to keep that completely private and completely separate. It's very much a personal choice in terms of privacy, but it can be quite scary and can be quite worrying, and quite exposing potentially. The longevity, again, can be a bit of a challenge, because once it's said, there's that fear. It's like, oh God, I've said it. And if you're a Facebook user and you've been using it for a long time, for example, it has this thing of every now and then it pops up like 10 years ago, this was what was happening. And sometimes that's a really fond memory and you share it and you go, oh, I remember that was lovely. Other times you see it and it's that cringing moment, you're like, oh God, delete that. So that the longevity, again, this can be a con. Overwhelm, I've talked about a little bit already and alluded to that. And part of this talk really is just to help you to kind of hopefully feel less overwhelmed, a little bit more inspired by it. Time and ad spend, you can spend an awful lot of money, an awful lot of time, an awful lot of energy in social media and in digital marketing, with very little return on investment if you let it. I sort of think you control it rather than the other way around. So it's, again, around those boundaries for yourself. Comparisonitis, if I can say that, I'm not sure if that's a word, I'm making it a word. That whole Instagram kind of life of seeing everybody's perfect life and feeling really rubbish about your own. It can be really hard, especially if you're having a bad day, you're seeing how everyone's doing really well, and then all the imposter syndrome starts kicking in and you start feeling a bit rubbish about what you're doing and wondering why you're doing it and thinking everyone else is doing so much better than me and look how rubbish I am. So it can be really difficult. And from a mental health point of view, especially with young people, I personally think this comparisonitis side of it can be a really toxic kind of environment for people. So it's about having some boundaries for yourself, and always remembering that, you know, in the same way that you're showing your best selves, if you like, on social media, so is everybody else. You never know what's going on behind the scenes, if you like. So just because everyone's showing these beautiful pictures of their beautiful life doesn't mean it's reality. People are always going to show their best selves because that's what they're trying to kind of convey, if you like, and you'll be doing the same. You behave in the same way, but we know that, you know, our lives aren't always perfect, and that's the same for everyone else. You're comparing your insides to everybody else's glossy outsides. So it's, again, about being pragmatic, I suppose, and having some boundaries for yourself. And then again, I've alluded to it a couple of times, that kind of toxic and polarizing environment you find, especially I personally find on Twitter in particular, and even Facebook to a degree, that everything gets political these days and things can get really polarized. And the social media platforms in particular, their whole business model is around massaging your ego. The whole algorithm is built to show you more of what you want to see. It shows you more of the things you like and the things you comment on. And so what the ultimate end result of that is that you start to only really see things that reinforce your own view of the world. So it's getting more and more polarized. There's so many different sort of areas around, like, if you believe this and therefore you must believe this, and people make assumptions about you. So it can be quite a difficult space to navigate sometimes, and people can get really upset and really political and really over the top on there. So again, one of the big cons. But as I say, if you think of it like a tool, you get out what you put in. So I think in terms of that overwhelm and that comparisonitis and the sort of some of the negative connotations of some of that toxicity, if you put in positive stuff, then you'll get positive stuff coming out from it. So if you keep your messages positive, then that's what will come back to you, if you like. It is a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy in that way. If you go in there being negative and being kind of snarky, then that's what you'll get back from it. And as a business, obviously, you want to kind of represent your brand in an appropriate way. So, some of my top tips. I've alluded to this a couple of times, but I think there's a bit of a less is more approach, I think, sometimes when it comes to digital marketing. When I say that, what I mean is little and often. So doing a small amount of something regularly. When I say less is more, often it's about picking one or two platforms that you can learn to use really well, that you enjoy using, that your audience will engage with, and that you're comfortable with, and just focusing your energy on those. It's much better to be really good and really consistent and really engaging on one or two platforms than it is to be a bit rubbish at everything. And the little and often thing is very much about, if you do choose to focus on a particular platform, let's say, for example, Instagram, then using it regularly, being on there daily, using the different tools. And of course, when I say daily, that sounds quite intense, but if all you're doing is, say, Instagram and Facebook, for example, then that's much more manageable than trying to be on everything every day. Like picking one or two and being there every day and regularly is going to be much more efficient use of your time, if you like. Because at the end of the day, it's very much about quality over quantity. When I say be on there every day, I don't mean you have to be on there every second of every day, talking constantly and not getting anything else done, because all you're doing is Instagramming people all day. It's going on there and doing one or two quality pieces of content, some quality engagement, and then moving on and getting on with the rest of your day. You'll have a lot more impact by creating some really good quality stuff and engaging in a positive and in a positive way, in a kind of small way, if you like, than just kind of spamming people with nonsense all the time. So I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, when social media was relatively new, it was very much about just like being on there constantly and always putting things on there, and it wasn't really about the quality. But I think these days, because there is so much choice for people, that when they choose to hang around on a platform, they want to see stuff that is interesting and engaging to them and that they can relate to and that they want to be involved with, rather than just feeling like they're being spammed with nonsense constantly. Get creative and experiment a bit. So remembering back to that slide where I talked about video and I talked about images and I talked about words, like play with a few different things, have a bit of fun with it. Do some pictures, do some memes, do some little quizzes, do some videos, have some awesome pictures, write some funny stuff, write some interesting articles, write some insightful things, have a play, get creative, learn to use the tools available in your chosen platforms really well, and then just experiment and have fun with it, I would say. It's much more appealing for you, much more engaging for you, you're much more likely to be consistent with it if you're enjoying the process. And also, people can, and it sounds weird, but people can feel that through the screen almost. It's like if they can see that you're enjoying it and that it's a positive experience for you, then they will also feed on that as well and engage in it in the same way. Being authentic, I think this is a really important one. It's really easy as a business to look at what other people are doing and think, oh, I'll try and be like that, or I'll try and do it that way because it obviously works for them. One of the best compliments I think I've ever had from somebody I've engaged with in my business is I went to a networking event, obviously pre-lockdown when we could physically go to networking events. a couple of years ago. I went to a networking event and this lady came up to me and she gave me a big hug and she said, "Oh, Amy, it's so lovely to see you. How are you?" And I had one of those panicked moments where you're like, "Oh God, who's she? Oh no," and your brain's going through its little Rolodex trying to work out how you know this person, who is she, and you're like pretending that you know them, pretending you know their name. "Oh yeah, I'm fine, how are you? It's lovely to see you." I'm like, "Oh God, who is this person?" And then she stepped off and she was horrified. She was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I realised we've never actually met in real life, but I've seen your blogs, I've seen you on social media, we've chatted on Facebook, and I really feel like I know you." And for me, that was one of those light bulb moments where it's like, hey, I've cracked it. It's like, if people feel like they know you from the content that you share and the way that you present yourself, then that is the best outcome that you can get from social media. If they feel like they know you and they get you and they get your business and then they actually come and engage with it and it's completely different to what they've seen online, that's where you've got a problem, where you've got a disconnect. And so that's why it's so important to be yourself and be authentic. And that doesn't necessarily mean you need to spam everyone with pictures of your kids, but it does mean about being yourself and being okay with your own quirks and your own weirdness and your own opinions. Even, dare I say it, if it's a bit contrary, if you are saying things that, you know, potentially aren't always going to be popular, one of the things you have to accept as a business is that you're never going to appeal to everybody. Everybody is never going to like you, and that's fine. In fact, that's good, because the people that will like you will really, really like you, and the people that don't like you won't want to engage with you, and you won't want to engage with them, and that's fine. So actually embrace the fact that you're different and that you have opinions and that you have a passion and you have authenticity and you have deep-seated values within your business, and don't be scared to share them. Yeah, you get some blowback, but you know, if you are true to your convictions and you know what you need to say, then that's fine. And you know, be okay with the fact that not everybody's going to be your customer. They're just not, and that's how it should be. It's better to be, you're never going to appeal to everybody. You can't be all things to all people. If you try to be, you end up being nothing for anyone. You're just wishy-washy and forgettable, and you know, people aren't going to bother following you or engaging if you're a bit grey and dull and blah. So again, as I've mentioned before, around that quality and creativity, learning to use all the capabilities of the platform. So if you do decide, do you know what, I'm going to really focus on Instagram, do the courses, go on some workshops, get involved at Made Project and all the other things that are out there, go to do some free challenges and really kind of up your skill level in that platform, and learn to use the different tools and techniques with it really well. Like use the stories, use the Instagram TV, use all of the hashtags, etc. Like do it really well and use all the different capabilities, because it makes it more interesting, and it means that you're going to have much better engagement, if you like. Evaluate your success and failure. Now, I'm not into numbers particularly. I'm not one of these people that's into like obsessing over my Google hits and click rates and things like that. Some people are, and that's fine. Not my thing, I have to confess. That said, it is sensible to actually see what's working and what's not working. And the social media platforms in particular are really good at giving you tools to be able to see that, even if it's just to be able to see very quickly, oh, I've got quite a lot of likes on that, I've had a few comments on that. That's giving you clues as you do things as to what people are engaging with and what could work. So when I say evaluate your success and failure, if you want to go really deep and number crunch it and read all the data and do all the analytics, you can do. But to be honest, most of the time you can do some stuff on screen and just get a bit of a litmus test, if you like, of what's working and what's not working. And obviously more of the stuff that is working and less of the stuff that isn't working. Repurpose, recycle, reuse, retake, reinvent, reshare. Like, don't keep reinventing the wheel every 5 minutes. You don't have to constantly be coming up with new ideas. You got one key idea. Let's say, for example, within your marketing plan for the year, you might have particular themes each month, and you might write one really good quality, informative thought leadership blog piece. You then repurpose the heck out of it, take quotes from it, use the images from it, and reshare it as many times in as many ways as possible. What you don't want to do is just literally copy and paste it all over the place. You can reshare things without being repetitive, but make the most of the content that you've created in as many different ways as you can, even beyond the digital space. If you've written some really great blog content, that can become workbooks for your clients. They can even become ebooks. There's so many different things that you could do with that content. You've created it, you own it, make the most of it, because that is the essence of your intellectual property. So instead of trying to constantly put lots of different things on different platforms, repurpose the same message, but just in a slightly different way. Keeping it positive, as I mentioned, you get out what you put in. So if you put in positive vibes, you'll get positive vibes back. But most importantly, enjoy it. So again, as I've mentioned, my business is Learn to Love Your Words, because I think if you enjoy doing something, then it's going to come much more naturally to you. The whole process is just going to be a lot smoother for you, and you're going to be much more consistent with things. So I hope that has given you some ideas and some inspiration. I realise I've kind of rattled through quite a lot of different things, given you quite a lot to digest and think about. But my big kind of piece of advice really is just go and experiment with a few things, but then be really strict with yourself and pick one or two things that are working for you. Learn to do them really well and really consistently and enjoy them. So, any questions?
Thank you so much, Amy. And yes, we have plenty of questions starting to come in. So I am going to just bounce straight into the chat questions. I'm going to try and partner or match some of them up if I think there's a kind of connection between them. But I just want to say, ending on that last slide were just the ideas of get creative, experiment, keep it positive, and enjoy it. Like, those are some really wonderful kind of words to kind of wrap that part up on. But anyway, I'm going to bounce to the questions. So starting with Adrian, who is asking if the information and the stats are easily available, because they're quite useful to have to hand. So the stats that you had with the Twitter demographics and percentages and Facebook and the like, do you just want to say again where that came from? And also, actually, if there are any places you might recommend that a business could find that information freely available?
Mm-hmm. I have to confess, I just Googled it and went into images and looked for some really good infographics that sort of popped out for me, and then I just sort of did a little bit of due diligence and just checked the dates on them to make sure it was up to date. So that's literally all I did. That's how I came across it. And there's loads of really useful information there. I think the tip there is probably to do the image search and look for infographics, because then you can see it quite quickly at a snapshot, see what's appropriate. In the past, I've used Digital Information World. That's quite good for up-to-date data and research. Also HubSpot. I use their database system, but their blogs are really good, and they've got loads of really good market intelligence on their sites as well. So those are good places to look. And of course, obviously, you can refer back to the slides. So yeah, those are probably my big tips on that one.
Brilliant. So we've got a couple, mainly about the kind of recommendations of platforms you might have for certain businesses. So we've got Geeta, who is looking for a platform that she can use to support a community rather than sell products. So wondering if you have any recommendations around spaces for community. Mm-hmm. And then also we've got Vicky, who is asking about best social media platforms for jewelry businesses. So recommendations?
Yeah, okay. I think with community, I would say Facebook, to be honest. I think, again, with every platform, it's very much about your audience and which community you serve. So if it's a community of small business owners, for example, then LinkedIn is going to be probably more appropriate. But if it's a community of mums, then it will be Facebook. But I think, generally speaking, for community stuff, Facebook is probably more geared up in terms of the tools on the platform, being able to set up groups and things on there. And And then you can kind of keep things really kind of specific and just invite and include the people that you want to have there. And you can set rules and things and invite, when people ask to join a group, you can ask them questions to make sure they're the right kind of person. You can moderate the group to make sure that, if people are breaking the rules, I suppose, if you like, you can boot them out. So Facebook probably generally for community, but if it's, let's say, for example, business networking groups and things, again, actually Facebook is good for that, but LinkedIn might be another potential one for that one. Jewelry businesses, Instagram, and maybe Pinterest, actually, because the benefit of Pinterest over Instagram, even though it's not really a social media platform as such, is that you can include your image of, say, your pair of earrings, and then people click on it and it takes you directly to the shop. So the actual web address of that image is embedded into the image, which is an advantage over Instagram, because of course with Instagram you have to then go into their website and find it that way, or follow the links that way. It's more steps. So potentially Pinterest, but yeah, absolutely, definitely Instagram. If you were teaching jewelry making, for example, then you could use YouTube and do how-to videos on there, but you could also use Instagram as well. So.
Okay, and to go back to the Facebook question on communities, is this still a good space for if you're sharing or handling sort of sensitive information? And also kind of, do you feel that there are the tools in order to kind of protect that kind of community? So you talked about it in some of the cons that talk about either that toxicity or that, just the kind of risk of trolls, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I think again, if you are going to use a Facebook, you can lock down the privacy. So from a personal point of view, you would probably want to lock down your own personal Facebook privacy, so that only your friends see it. But then obviously your Facebook page would always be public. But with your group, you could keep that private to only people who are invited to the group or who asked to be invited, and then you moderate them. So I think in terms of privacy settings, Facebook is probably the most flexible, with more control, and also with groups and things you can keep them private. So literally only people have to ask permission to be part of it, go through a bit of vetting process, and then you as a moderator of the group can ban people, block messages a lot more easily in that platform than perhaps some of the others. So so I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. So we've got Paul. He was asking, if you have a Facebook page, Etsy shop and socials, do you need your own website as well? So maybe this connects into that, the less is more kind of thing, maybe, or just thinking about where you are. Mm-hmm. So do you think you still need a website as well?
It's an interesting one, that one, because I think ultimately, my instinct tells me that ultimately you probably should have some sort of website, even if it's literally just a bit of a holding page, a bit of an online business card, because then people can find you. You might not want to necessarily spend lots of time cultivating it and having a blog on it, but I think it's quite nice to have one place online where people can go and find you. You might even just have your name as your domain name. And then people can easily find you and then go from there to your Etsy, to your wherever. So I think from that point of view, it might be useful to have just a really simple one page, almost like a bit of an online business card. Of course, the biggest advantage of having your own website is around that, who owns the copyright, and what happens if Etsy, you've got more control, if you like. What happens if you're inadvertently banned from Facebook or Etsy, or it goes down or goes wrong or whatever. So I think ultimately there's a certain amount of security about having your own website, but ultimately your engagement and your conversations and the audience building will probably happen elsewhere. But it's a good sort of, this is my flag in the sand, if you like, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does to me. Sorry, that makes sense to me. I hope it makes sense to Paul. So actually, you mentioned something about IP a little bit, and I remember when I was scrolling through the questions, there was a question around the copyright rules around reposting other people's content on your own page. Do any insight into that, or can you suggest any places that might be useful to read up on this further?
Yeah, for sure. To read up on intellectual property in more detail, there's the IPO, so the Intellectual Property Office, which is a government office. If you just Googled IPO, I think it's ipo.gov is the website. So there's lots of information there about it. But generally speaking, if you have got your own website, you would never copy somebody else's thing and put it on your website, because that would be a breach of copyright. If you featured anybody else's stuff, you would have to give them credit and a link back to it. So, for example, I've had I quite regularly get people writing guest posts for my website, but I always acknowledge them, if you like. I always have a link back to their website. I always acknowledge the original source. And because they've sent it to me and asked me to host it, I've got their permission, if you like. But what you shouldn't, I suppose one of the big things, and a really easy mistake to make online, is what you should never do is Google something, pick an image, take it and put it on your website, because you might be inadvertently breaching someone's copyright. The infographic I shared, I had the website of the company was on it and things like that. So I've shown that I didn't produce that. I was quite clear about the fact it wasn't my infographic. So it's kind of giving credit where credit is due. But in terms of images, if you are including images on your website, it's always better to produce your own images if you can, because then there's no questions about copyright. But otherwise, there are some stock image websites where you can get images for free, or you can pay for them as well. But they've got plenty of free ones. So there's one called Pixabay, PIXABAY.com, Pexels, PEXELS, Unsplash is another one. So there are kind of databases where you can get images. So I think that's the main concern really in terms of copyright. But again, with words, you should never go and just copy and paste somebody else's text off their website without their permission or giving them credit, or both.
Mm-hmm. We've got a few more questions. I'm conscious that it's coming up to 1:30 now, so if it's okay just to go for a few more minutes, and I'll try and squeeze these kind of questions together. We've got a couple of questions around tools. So are there recommendations for tools where you can automate, like, for example, social media? Like, there are some schedulers like Hootsuite and TweetDeck, I think, for Twitter, but are there any others that you might recommend that might work for Instagram, for example?
Instagram you can do on Hootsuite, but it's a bit of a faff. Do you know what? I've only used Hootsuite and TweetDeck myself. So those are the ones that I know about. But most of the social media platforms, you can actually schedule within the platform now. So with Facebook, for example, when you on your business page, you can go into the publishing tools and you can schedule stuff direct. And actually, platforms like Facebook like it if you use their own integrated scheduling tools, because it's like keeping you in their platform, so they'll reward you, if you like, with the algorithm. But yeah, so you can do Instagram on Hootsuite. I've got a feeling that there's probably some others that would do Instagram these days. I don't know about Buffer. That's another big one. That might be one that's worth looking into. But yeah, and also on Twitter, you can also schedule directly in the platform now as well. When you go to form a tweet, there's like a little scheduler tool at the bottom, so you can also do it directly in the platform. Mm-hmm. LinkedIn, I don't think you can do it directly in the platform at the moment, but I've used Hootsuite for LinkedIn and things. I think the problem with Hootsuite is you can only have up to 3 channels. I think it was free, and then it can be potentially quite expensive.
Yeah, I recall that Hootsuite has a minimum of 3 on the free account. So still on kind of tools, the value of using like paid ads, particularly if you're trying to, I suppose, generate more leads or interest towards, I suppose, your products or services. And then also, I suppose, around similar space of the paid ads, using keywords. So is there a way to find like less competitive or search words or keywords that might help? Are there any tactics or approaches maybe?
Yeah. Well, I suppose actually in terms of paid ads and keywords, probably one of the best places to start is Google AdSense. And Google AdSense is the platform that you sort of sign up, you register your website on there. You don't actually have to spend any money in order to just have an account, but you can go in and search for the keywords and things in there. And you're right to say, actually, I think when it comes to keywords, so keywords are the words basically that people type into Google when they want to search for something. And if you just go for really big, general, generic ones that are really popular, like it's slightly counterintuitive because you think, oh, I want to choose the popular ones because people will find me. But the thing with Google is there are so literally billions of websites on there. So if you type, let's say, for example, blogging into Google, then you will get like 1,000 pages and like 1 billion returns. And so your piece of content is likely to disappear in that sea. But then the more and more specific you get, then you are you're in a smaller number of returns. So if you typed in, for example, how to blog to grow a business, for example, if you typed in like a long phrase, then there would be less results, and so therefore your website's more likely to come up. So yeah, Google AdSense is a good place to start because you can find things that are less popular, which is sometimes actually a bit cheaper if you were going to pay for adverts, but it also does give you a clue as to what people are searching for, so that you can use those words within your own content, if you like, so you can write articles that relate to those topics, if you like. So yeah, so Google AdSense, Google Tools generally, actually. The thing with Google Tools is they're all free as well. So you can go in and just kind of make the most of them in lots of different ways. Analytics will give you a bit more it's a bit more data driven. So it will give you ideas of keywords and things you want to get more in depth. But yeah, AdSense is a good place to start. With adverts, it's always a really difficult thing, really, I think, with adverts, because I've seen so many different things about this. I went on a workshop ages ago from like an SEO company who were basically saying that you had to literally spend like hundreds of pounds a month in Google Ads to make any difference. And okay, they were probably trying to sell us some Google Ads, but the budget can be really high. It's kind of how long is a piece of string. Pay-per-click might be a better way of approaching it, because then you only pay if people actually click onto it. So, you know, again, Google AdSense and Google AdWords will kind of support you through that process. Again, with Facebook ads as well, I think if, for example, you were going to choose Facebook as a big platform to start using to promote your business, then you would definitely want to look into ads more. But my advice, I would say, really, when it comes to social media paying for social media advertising, is actually spend a bit of time cultivating your audience organically to start with. So in other words, getting engagement, getting people on there, having some content on there, and consistently posting content, getting some conversations going, because what you don't want to do is spend a load of money on adverts. People then click through to the Facebook page and there's like nothing on there, because they're just going to click away and you waste the money. See what I mean? So hopefully that helps a little bit. So yeah, be specific, do a bit of research. And again, the advice stands really with any platform. If you are, for example, going to choose Facebook, I would go on all the courses and get all the information that you can, so you get some really good advice on how to best make adverts work. But generally speaking, cultivate the audience organically first, so that when people do go onto the page, there's a reason for them to stay for a while. Does that make sense? Hopefully that answers the question.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm conscious we have run over. We've still got a couple of questions to ask. So what I might suggest, Amy, is we can have a little look at the remaining questions and maybe sort of answer those after, and then we can sort of send it out when we contact those that have signed up to the talk today, if that's okay.
Yeah, very happy to see that. That's cool.
Brilliant. I'll tell you what, do you want to stop sharing your screen for a second so we can see your lovely face? Because we are going to wrap it up here, if that is okay. Right.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for all your fab questions. I hope that inspired you.
very sure it did. So I'd like to, a massive thank you to Amy for joining us today. I'd just like to say thank you very much for attending today, and I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day and join us for future Inspire Talks.